Alrighty, let's begin, shall we? So welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for what is the third of a three-part series that's been jointly presented by SDSN, Australia, New Zealand Pacific, ACTS and PRME on mainstreaming education for the Sustainable Development Goals over the last couple of weeks. My name is Rhiannon Boyd and I'm here to say hello on behalf of ACTS. And I would like to start the session today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands in which we all respectively meet from today. And I hope you'll all join in paying respects to their elders past, present and emerging. We, of course, extend those respects onto all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who are joining us in the meeting today. I myself am working and I live on the lands of the Wurundjeri people as part of the Kulin Nation. So that's just outside of Melbourne, and Kulin Nation represents a language group of five different traditional owners that cover much of Melbourne and central Victoria. So as always, we very much welcome our audience to say hello in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from today. I promise I have the chat turned on this week. Apologies for anybody that's been with us in the past couple of weeks where I haven't had that on. And that's it. I'm going to pass over to the wonderful Tal Keston from SDSN to provide the introduction for today's session.
Thanks so much, Rhi. It's great to be here, obviously, for the third and final session in the series we're running this November on education for the SDGs in higher education and how we can scale up and mainstream that across the sector in our region. So I'm the network manager for the Sustainable Development Solutions Network, Australia, New Zealand and Pacific Network, based at the Monash Sustainable Development Institute. And I'm joining you today from the traditional lands of the Kulin Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. So education for SDGs can take many forms, anywhere from co-curricular activities to dedicated degree programs and anything in between and actually around those things. And today's session is really designed to explore the strengths and challenges of these different types of approaches and consider how they can be used to scale up action in higher education. So today's session will be facilitated by our advisory group member, Dr. Miran Nejati, who's a senior lecturer at the School of Business and Law at Edith Cowan University. And he's also director of PRME and Sustainability there, but actually also co-leads the education portfolio of PRME for the Australia and New Zealand region. So it's very exciting to have him on board. As always, please post your questions through the Q&A facility on Zoom, but also would love you to post any comments or links or reflections or where you're from in the chat. And yeah, it's really nice to hear to know who's with us and what you're thinking as we're speaking. So I'm now going to turn over to Miran and looking forward to a really interesting session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tal and Rhi, Kaya, and good day, everyone. I'm Dr. Maria Nejati from ECU School of Business and Law. Before we start the session, I also want to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm facilitating today's session, Wajak Noongar Boodja, and pay my respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging. It is my great pleasure to facilitate today's panel discussion, which, as Rhi and Tal were alluding to, is part of the webinar series. These webinar series really aim to provide a platform for the higher education community in the Australia, New Zealand, and Pacific region to share, discuss, and connect across all disciplines around good practices, challenges, and opportunities for scaling up education for the SDGs in our region. As we all know, and it was already discussed earlier on as well, one of the most important contributions that any higher education institution can actually make to help achieve the SDGs would be to provide their students with the knowledge, skills, and mindset to be able to address complex sustainable development challenges. And these can take various forms and shapes. And the purpose of today's session will be really to focus on a number of those different examples. Today's session, we will be hearing about some of the various experiences and learning from higher education institutions across the region. And these include various implementation of projects and initiatives. And one of the things in particular that we will be interested to see would be the strengths, weaknesses, challenges, and dilemmas across a number of these initiatives. In my case in particular, over the past 3 years, I have helped to co-lead the SDG Challenge WA, which is a multi-actor action-based activity focusing on the education for sustainability. As part of that initiative, students are mentored by sustainability champions from industry and academia to apply principles of design thinking in developing and pitching a solution to at least one of the SDGs. This particular initiative is jointly organized by public universities across WA, namely UWA, ECU, Curtin and Murdoch, in partnership with industry, and has been supported by Prime as well as the United Nations Association of Australia, WA division. One of the key learning for me as part of that project has been that there is a need for us to go beyond the typical silo-based structures that we often found ourselves within the university system, and rather move on to engage with and advocate for interdisciplinary collaboration. So in particular for me, I'm hoping to get additional insights from today's discussion from our distinguished panel members. As Tol was mentioning as well, throughout the presentations and discussions, please, if you've got any particular questions or anything comes to your mind, feel free to post it in the chat or Q&A section so that we can compile them, and these can be asked during the Q&A portion of today's session. Initially, what we will be doing is listen to some initial remarks by our panel members, and that will be followed by a time for further discussion and Q&A. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over to our panel members to start by sharing their initial remarks on the topic and providing an overview of their initiatives and reflecting on some of its strengths, weaknesses, and challenges. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Godine, and I run the Masters of the Sustainable Development Goals at Massey University in Australia, in New Zealand, not in Australia. So basically what we have created is we've created an interdisciplinary degree that focuses specifically on the Sustainable Development Goals. I run it as the academic coordinator, and then I work with different lecturers from across the university, from a range of colleges and departments as we put the degree together. The way that it's structured is all students do 2 30-credit courses, which equals their 60 credits in core subjects on sustainable development and the SDGs in practice. And then students are able to choose from 8 different specializations where what they want to specialize in. The last 2, climate change and education, are still in the process of being approved. We're hoping to have that in 2024 and 2025. So students choose one of the different specializations, as I said before, from a variety of colleges or departments across the university, and they are specific subjects that they are able to do within that specialization. Once they've done all of their credits in the theory, and then in the core courses, and then all of their credits, all of their theory in their specialization, they then do a final 60 credit, which is a practicum and a research report, where they have to work in an organization for 8 to 10 weeks. That's working with the SDGs or sustainability, and then write up a research report about that, where they reflect on what it's like in the real world to actually try and implement the SDGs. So they try and link together the theory that they've got and then with the real world, real world example. So yeah, so that's how the degree works. It's a cross-cutting degree, it's holistic. We deal with all 17 SDGs, and obviously depending on what specialization a student chooses, they will focus on specific SDGs in that specialization. And then I try and get them to actually focus on 1 or 2 when they do their research report, and they actually go into the goals and the targets, and they really look at those goals and targets and evaluate or analyze them based on their experience in the real world, which is, well, the real world is what I like to call it. A strength of this degree has been the students. The students that have come into this degree are amazing. They've blown my mind away. Often I feel like they have far more to teach me than I have to teach them. But because of the way the degree is structured, we have such a range of students from a range of backgrounds with incredible life experience and work experience. And so the interaction between such a diverse group of students has absolutely been fantastic. I mean, I couldn't replicate it. I couldn't create it if I tried. A challenge that I'm facing is one that's very close to me is bringing in or incorporating an indigenous knowledge and indigenous frameworks to the way in which we understand the SDGs. It seems as though in most cases, the SDGs are seen as a Western construct. I don't know, from my experience, it seemed like there hasn't been much support in general from many of the Indigenous groups that I've worked with or spoken to. And so that is something that I'm really trying to work on with this degree. And obviously, I need input from and like, collaboration and cooperation from people who have this knowledge and life experience. So yeah, so that's me.
Thank you, Samantha. Appreciate that. Let's move on to our next panel member, Liz.
Thanks, Maria OBrien. It's really wonderful to be part of this diverse panel. I think it's really reflective of the really valuable and diverse and different ways for implementing education for the SDGs. So I'm really happy to be here to share and learn. I'm actually stepping in for Dr. Susie Ho, who was meant to present on a brand new 3-week intensive unit for undergrads at Monash. So I hope she can come back and share at some point what they've been doing in that space. Today, though, I'm here to share a little bit about the Green Steps program. And if you've been around universities in Australia for a while and worked in the sustainability space, you may already be aware of it. It's been around for about 23 years, and it was run at various universities at different points over those 23 years. So Green Steps today runs as an annual sustainability leadership program at Monash. The program is co-curricular and is run out of the Monash Sustainable Development Institute, and we are a non-faculty aligned institute. The program itself is focused on developing leaders and change agents who can drive the sustainable development agenda. And as part of that, we offer practical transformative sustainability training, which takes place over 5 days. And then there's an opportunity for students to take part in a team-based consultancy project where they can apply everything that they've learned in the training, and those are delivered in partnership with our program partners. So each year we recruit 30 students from across the university into the program from all different disciplines. And the students are selected based on their passion for sustainability, their leadership potential, their motivation and personal attributes. In terms of our ESD approach, the program is highly interactive, it's interdisciplinary, so students coming together from across all the disciplines, but also our guest speakers and facilitators come from a range of different disciplinary backgrounds. It's applied, and there's a really strong cohort experience that we develop. It's also very introductory in nature. So we introduce sustainable development and the SDGs in quite a general way, but where students get quite an in-depth understanding of the challenges and the gravity of those challenges, and I guess are confronted with the disorientation of unsustainability. But the other element of it is about building hope and agency by looking at solutions and giving them the tools to drive change processes. And we look at those change processes from 3 levels. So global, macro, organizational, and then also individual. And we cover topics like systems thinking, strategic planning, the business case for sustainability, communication, behavior change. And there's a real large focus on influencing without authority or positional power. So students don't often graduate into ideal sustainability positions or jobs. or even in supportive organizations. So how do you advocate and design and lead change in that context? And then there's the consultancy project element, which students work on a project with one of our industry partners or on campus, focusing on an SDG or sustainability challenge. And so in that way, the campus becomes a living lab. One of the strengths, I think, is the interdisciplinary learning element of the program. We get wonderful perspectives that students bring in from their disciplinary degrees, and that kind of focus on interaction and experiential learning, and also the freedom that we have to design a program that is co-curricular. And I guess one of the challenges for us is scale. So we obviously focus on the strength of depth of learning, and it is very cohort-based and small activities focused. But how do we scale that? You know, running a program like this is actually quite resource intensive and requires to have some sustainable funding that sits behind it as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Liz. Very insightful. Let's move on to our third panel member, Sarah.
Kia ora, I'm Sarah Wakes. I'm at the University of Otago, which is on the South Island of New Zealand on the East Coast. We're going from big scale to small scale. So I run one paper. I run a paper at summer school here at the University of Otago called Treasure or Trash, Sustainability of Materials. So this is a paper I run with a colleague, and we run it over the 6 weeks of summer school in January and February, and we run it as a distance paper. So the idea is that we wanted it to be inclusive and available to anybody, and the students didn't have to be on campus. So, and that's actually allowed us to run the paper in a sustainable way as well, which is great. So it's a 200 level paper. So I'm focusing on undergraduate students, and it is, I would say, the only paper at the University of Otago that is primarily concerned with sustainability. There are others that touch on it, but we have it in our title, and we're extensively about sustainability. And really, we're focusing on the environmental and social sustainability of materials. And we look at the whole life cycle from extraction of raw materials all the way through to end of life, disposal, recycling, reuse, etc. We are not discipline specific, so we welcome students, as long as they have done 3 100 level or any level papers, they can come and do our paper. And we get students from sciences, humanities, commerce and health sciences coming to do the paper. And they all bring their own perspective into the paper, which I really love, and they recognise that sustainability and the SDGs are really important for everything that we do. So our numbers have grown. We currently in the last 2 years have had around 100 students to deal with at distance, which has been fantastic. So we're mainly focused around SDGs, life on land, life below water, responsible consumption and production, and some of the aspects of social sustainability and some of the others. We have one lecture segment on the SDGs, but really it's about the environmental sustainability. We really want to address, or we do address, specific material aspects to give students a more in-depth knowledge of what issues drive some of those SDGs or some of the key objectives in the SDGs. And really it's one 18-point paper. So we really want to give the students a thirst for learning more and go and do other more specific subjects on sustainability in the SDGs. So I like to think of the SDGs as a background hum to our paper, that they sit there and they inform what we do. We also want the students to come out with an understanding of the complexity of sustainability of materials. And we also want them to walk the walk as well as talk the talk. So we actually get them to do a sustainability challenge as part of the paper that they do in their own home or their summer job or whatever it might be. A key aspect is getting them to understand this complexity and the fact that these are wicked problems to solve. and that it takes systems thinking and design thinking and engineering and social aspects and all manner of different disciplines to actually solve some of these issues. We do have a paper coming out. It's just in production at the moment, in research in learning technology on how we actually run the paper. So yeah, watch out for that if you're interested in some of the strategies we use to actually run the paper at distance. I think one of the strengths we have in this is that we welcome all students, and we try and make it a fun and exciting paper, and we try and get those distance students to interact with each other through discussion boards and helping each other with their challenges. We also like to tap into the students' own knowledge from the discipline, their major subject. So this is often for the students a fun paper, some extra points, or the last paper they do, and they bring with them a wealth of experience, and we like to acknowledge that. And we always learn something from the students as well. I think sort of challenge is that really we're only one paper, and I'm trying to get a sustainable major up and going at Otago, but it's uphill work. And I think that's me, really. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Our next panel member is going to be Issy. Over to you, Issy.
Hi, thank you. So my name's Izzy. I am a student at the University of Adelaide, studying a Masters of Law, and I'm zooming in from Ghana country today. So I'm going to be talking about the Sustainable Development Goals Student Hub at the University of Adelaide and the kind of projects that we're doing and the kind of education projects that we're working on. So I'll talk a little bit firstly about what the hub is. So we're part of the SDG Students Program, which is an initiative of SDSN Youth. So that is aiming to achieve the 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals in higher education. So the hub is a semi-virtual, semi-physical place for students to come together, learn about the SDGs and implement them. And we're also part of a larger network. So there are SDG student hubs all over the world. What we do, so we're a group of volunteer students who are really passionate about sustainability, and we reach across all academic disciplines, and we really endeavour to include students with a broad range of experiences and skill sets. So in our volunteer capacity, we're aiming to transform our university and then the wider community as well, based on the SDGs. So we aim to achieve this transformation through education, through engagement in the community, and then also action and impact. So our education focus is learning about as many of the SDGs as possible in as much detail as we can in our volunteer capacity, and particularly how they apply to our specific local context in Adelaide, and how they interact with each other, because we recognise that they're really interconnected. That's a really important point. In our engagement in the community, this also has an education element to it. So we want to bring the SDGs to the broader community so they have a deeper understanding of how they impact broader society. And then action and impact, creating solutions in our local context. So this is just a few examples of what we've done in each of those, in the solutions, education and community aspects of what the hub does. So hands-on beach cleanup type of things for the Clean Up Australia Day, panel events about local small businesses working in sustainability, and then we're sitting in our university hub there, trying to talk to students about how they think that the SDGs relate to their degree that they're studying, and just going, hey guys, like the Sustainable Development Goals, they link to you as well, even if you're studying dentistry or if you're an engineer, everything. So just trying to like spread the word about what the SDGs are, but also that they're simply there, and they're really important. They're a great framework. Our current project is called Climate Potentials, Our Future Reality. So this is our biggest project yet, and it covers the spectrum of solutions, community and education. So we propose using virtual technology, virtual reality technology to show a well-known place in South Australia with the impacts of further future climate change. And we've identified the following SDGs as relevant. So goal 4, quality education, in particular target 4.7, which is to ensure that all learners acquire the knowledge and skills needed to promote sustainable development, including through the education around sustainable lifestyles and things like that, including how important cultural diversity is to the contribution to sustainable development. Then we have goal 11, which is sustainable cities and communities. So target 11.11b is to substantially increase the number of cities and human settlements, adopting integrated policies towards resource efficiency, mitigation, adaptation, and resilience to disasters, because through our preliminary research, it appears that what the virtual reality technology will be showing is that there'll be an increased risk to human society and cities due to natural disasters. And then, of course, goal 13, climate action, and pretty much all of the targets there are relevant to our project. So we're imagining this climate potentials project will begin in the year 2022, introducing a location and showing why it's important ecologically and culturally. The participants that are putting on these VR headsets will experience the same location in the year 2050 and then 2100 with different emission scenarios, projections, and seeing what that location will look like under different emission scenarios, which accounts for different levels of adaptation and mitigation. So the aim of the project is to educate South Australian communities regarding the realities of human actions and inactions in relation to climate change. And like I said, our preliminary research and consultations with academics suggest that this type of immersive experience will produce a deeper and longer lasting motivation to think about and act on climate change challenges at our local level in South Australia. So this project, one of its real strengths is how innovative it is. It's really drawn attention to a lot of students and staff at our university. So we have the students from diverse academic backgrounds volunteering for this project. So we've been able to really grow and continue to grow that hub of learning and engagement towards this really exciting end goal, which is getting headsets on people and seeing this 2050, 2100 projections in that local context. One of the challenges that we've really faced is being a volunteer-run organisation and receive next to no funding. Yeah, basically, we've had to go to individual staff members and other organisations for support, but they've been excellent in supporting us that way. But yeah, so we really want to see this come to fruition, and hopefully will be carried out in different states, territories, and nations if it's successful. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Izzy. That's fantastic. Now, last but not least, Rowena.
Hi, we're coming to you today from the lands of the Turrbal and Yagara people, and we'd like to acknowledge that these were lands that never ceded and always places of teaching, research and learning. I'm here today with my colleague as well, Associate Professor Anna Huggins, who is the Director of Education in the law school. And what I'm really going to be talking to you about today is embedding the SDG goals within the law school curriculum. And this has really been a team approach within the law school, which is why it's both of us talking today. So just to set some context about how this project even came about, really, I guess, is at the university level, we've had the appointment of our Pro-Vice Chancellor for Sustainability, which is Professor Kerry Wilson. What this has meant is that there has been that sort of high-level support within the university to really sort of drive forward and have action on SDGs and sustainability across research, teaching, campus facilities, a range of areas. So what that has really done is given us an opportunity to look at our law school curriculum and embed sustainability across it. And that's been an opportunity that hasn't previously existed in the past. So we've grabbed it with both hands. So what sort of happened so far in this space is the university, and we've got one of our colleagues on the session today, Deanna Meth, sort of sit within the curriculum development and academic support place here. But I was part of a video that really was designed to teach people that don't know a lot about SDGs about how they could think about incorporating SDGs into their course. So I teach a unit on environmental law. And what I just did is I explained to people essentially what environmental law is all about. And I sort of gave some tips on where to find resources and where to begin to look for if you wanted to embed SDG into your unit, but it wasn't something that you already do. What I'm going to do now is just quickly pass over to Anna, who's going to talk to us about the process that we went through in the law school to actually embed the SDG goals.
Thanks, Rowena, and hi, everyone. So as Rowena mentioned, we're currently in the process of embedding sustainability in our law curriculum. And this is part of a process of reaccreditation that all degrees at QUT go through every 5 years or so. And at the moment, we are reaccrediting our straight law degree, our graduate entry law degree, and our 11 associated double degrees, which cover about almost 4,000 students in total. So it's a very large law program, one of the largest in Australia. So law has both internal and external accreditation requirements. We have external accreditation requirements in relation to core areas of legal knowledge that are required by our legal profession admissions board. And we also have to align with the threshold learning outcomes for law. And on top of that, as Rowena mentioned, there are university priorities that we are aligning our curriculum with as well. And one of these new priorities is around sustainability. So in order to address this priority in our curriculum review, we convened a working party that comprised of experts in various areas of sustainability from our law school colleagues. And we brainstormed what our options were, both in the core curriculum and also in the elective space. And one of the key recommendations that came from the working party was that it would be desirable to focus on the core curriculum, as this is a way to ensure that all of our students engage with this important theme. Whereas if it's just in the elective space, only the students who elect to do it will have that exposure. And interestingly, this approach was strongly supported by our law advisory group. So this is our professional advisory group that provides input into a range of matters, including curriculum design. And they commented that ESG, environmental, social and governance, is a particularly important and growing area of legal practice, and they thought it was important enough to be embedded in the core curriculum. So we've adopted a whole of course approach to embedding sustainability in the curriculum, starting with our course learning outcome. So we have a new course learning outcome on the role of law in achieving sustainable futures. And a key way that we are introducing that new course learning outcome in the degree is by creating a new first year unit called Law, Governance and Sustainability. So that will be a key place in the curriculum where all students very early in their degree are introduced to key concepts around sustainability. And then we're also identifying key units in the second, third and fourth year of the degree where students will be able to deepen their engagement with this important theme, culminating in a fourth year research project around sustainability.
And then sort of in law as well, it was quite important for us to define what we meant by the SDG definition. So some earlier feedback we'd sort of got is that students were quite well aware of that the 17 goals existed and broadly what they were, but what they wanted to sort of know a little bit more about was what to do with them. So in terms of like a legal definition for the SDG goals, we're using the concept of environmental and social governance, so ESG. And we're using this as an overarching framework to explain how regulation and laws and policies are beginning to shift and shape to include ESG requirements. And so the really big example in Australia is really, I guess, around modern slavery laws and the reporting requirements that exist around modern slavery, but also around carbon accounting as well. And these are examples of sort of ESG legal frameworks. In addition to that, we're sort of seeing the emergence of due diligence as a really important legal tool that's beginning to emerge to sort of support, I guess, the development of managing environmental and social risks across supply chains. And again, that is beginning to be embedded in legislation, creating obligations for government, industry, individuals even as well. So the concept that we've really used to sort of bring this all together across the curriculum is this concept of environmental and social governance. And again, the feedback that we've had from the legal profession is that this is a concept of growing significance within law firms and practices, and something that it would be ideal for our graduates to know about when they're exiting the law degree.
Yeah, so this is a bit of an overview of what we're doing in the core curriculum, but I think it's also worth noting our ideas and our plans for what we'd like to do in the elective space as well. This is more a medium-term plan, not a focus of the current reaccreditation. So on top of the approach to embedding sustainability in the core, we would like to, in the future, create a minor in law and sustainability that deepens students' engagement with these important themes. We already have a number of electives, including environmental law and human rights law, public international law and health law, that all relate to the SDGs. But what we'd like to do is develop a broader suite of electives that students can choose from, and actually have some acknowledgement on their transcript that they have done a minor in law and sustainability, to indicate to prospective employers that they have a particular interest and also a particular skill set in this area. So in terms of strengths and challenges of the approach that we have adopted in the law school here at QUT, one of the strengths is that because we are focusing on embedding sustainability in the core curriculum, we can ensure that all of our students will have this opportunity to engage with these important themes. Particularly, it was a big win that we were able to get a new core first year unit addressing sustainability themes. And a challenge is that we would have liked to have done more in the elective space, but one of the things that we had to be mindful of there was resources, and ensuring that there is sufficient student demand to make this viable into the future. So we're going to do more research on that before we develop our elective portfolio in the future.
And we'll hand back over now.
Thank you very much indeed, Rowena and Anna, for that sharing of insights. So far in the session, what we initially heard from Samantha, giving us some fabulous ideas in terms of the diversity of the courses as part of their Master of Sustainable Development Goals at Massey University. It was very insightful to hear about those and the different topics covered as part of that. Then we heard Elizabeth telling us a little bit about the Green Steps Sustainability Leadership Program and how interactive and interdisciplinary that particular program was. The fact that it tried to apply and encourage students to actually apply what they've learned as part of the training and ensure that the application side of things is also embedded as part of that was interesting to observe. I specifically, however, like the idea of trying to advocate for influence and even lead for change, that concept that you can actually lead for change regardless of being within a positional and influential power or role. That to me was quite a standout. We also heard from Sarah telling us about the treasure and trash sustainability of the material as part of their summer school. The idea that the program itself was very inclusive and available to anybody without the student needing to actually be on campus to be part of that was quite interesting to observe. The program itself focused on undergraduate programs, and I would be keen to hear when we are thinking about scaling up as part of, further growing such initiatives, what are going to be some of the challenges and probably areas for us to keep an eye on. One thing in particular that I liked from that presentation as well was that the training itself actually gave students a thirst to learn. And to me, it was almost acting as a nudge to empower students to consider what they can do and be part of the solution, rather than being part of a almost like a passive observer of what's actually going on. It was very refreshing also to have in the mix Izzy, our student rep in the panel, to tell us a little bit about this particular hybrid platform, the SDG hub that they have within the University of Adelaide, and the fact that it told us quite a different way of trying to address education for sustainability. In this particular case, we looked at volunteer students coming together. They are passionate about sustainability, trying to help transform not only their universities, but also the wider community around the SDGs and sustainability. One thing in particular, especially when Izzy was highlighting about their current project on climate potential, I thought that was brilliant, because the use of virtual reality to help visualize the impact of climate change and the fact that, look, our actions or even inaction could lead to certain outcomes, I thought that was really brilliant. It immediately reminded me of a recent book that I'm reading by Daniel Pink called The Power of Regret. And I thought, wow, this is a brilliant way of trying to utilize the power of regret in nudging people to act. And last but not least, I thought it was very helpful to get to hear from Rowena and Anna about the process that they've gone through to embed sustainability across QUT Law School curriculum, while trying to make sure that they are still complying with the internal as well as the external accreditation and priorities within the university and beyond. So to me, when I'm reflecting on all of these panel discussions so far, it tells me that there are various and diverse ways of trying to address education for sustainability. And in fact, if you look at the examples from curricular, extracurricular, as well as student-led approaches, one thing that stands out is that, well, probably there isn't a silver bullet in that regard, and probably a combination of some of these various approaches might in fact be necessary and essential to be able to advocate for these. Now, we've got quite a number of questions already being posted in the Q&A section. I still encourage and welcome you to post even more questions, and depending on how much time we've got, we'll try to address them as much as possible. A number of these questions are addressed specifically to some of the panel members. I will try to start with some of those questions first, and there are a number of questions that are open to all of the panel members, in which case I will let you guys know. The first question that we've got is to Samantha, and asking, this question is coming from Usha, asking, what pearls of wisdom can you offer when engaging with the students from different disciplinary bases from an engagement and assessment perspective? In other words, how do you structure your learning outcomes around that?
Thanks so much. I mean, that was definitely one of the early considerations we had, because with the Masters of the SDGs, students can come in with any bachelor's degree and they can do any of the specializations. So we have, I mean, we've had people come and join us who previously did degrees in chemistry, and then they choose a global development specialization. We've had some lawyers come through and then they've chosen environmental. We've had lots of accountants and choosing, you know, not economics or business, they choose an environment or global development or peace and security. So we definitely do have a cohort of students with a broad range of disciplinary backgrounds who then also engage in a broad range of different specializations, and they all do the core courses together. To be honest, with all of that understanding, I've only had one student struggle with our assessments. So basically, although it is an interdisciplinary degree, the degree itself is housed within the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. So in terms of the way in which our learning outcomes are structured and the types of assessments that we do, I would say they're probably more familiar to a social science approach. So, you know, a lot of our learning outcomes are critically assessed, critically analyzed, demonstrate a critical understanding. A lot of that's social more, I suppose, which is often more, you know, closely aligned to social science learning type outcomes. So sometimes we do have students, for example, the one in particular that I'm thinking of, who had a very strong scientific background. I don't think she'd ever written an essay before. And so then I had to really help her in terms of, okay, this is what we mean by an essay. This is what we mean by critically assess. But in all honesty, it's only been one. And if I think about it now, I mean, I mean, I've got at the moment a student, one of my students is an engineer, has never written essays, and she's writing fantastic essays. So I probably have to ask them how we do it more. I suppose there's a lot of engagement, and that is not a problem. That's not even a challenge. The students come in and they're really motivated about the subject title, the subject content. And so we are a distance, we offer distance, and most of my students are distance. Most of my students are also quite mature. So I'd say 30 and up. They haven't recently left university. In fact, probably more than the different disciplinary bases. That's a challenge, is that they generally working professional people, and then they're panicking because they haven't studied in 20 years. So I'm sorry, this is a bit of a long-winded answer. I would say the learning outcomes are structured in a more social science way. It's about critical thinking, developing and understanding, showing your understanding. And I suppose the way that we deal with the different disciplinary backgrounds is we have a high level of engagement. So we meet every single week in all of the core courses and the practicum for at least an hour with our students, talking through the issues, helping them to engage in a critical way. However, then, and this is potentially a challenge, in their specializations, when they go to different colleges, I have no say over those modules. So I have no influence in terms of how they do their learning outcomes, how they deliver those courses. Then it's up to whatever department or college they land up in for their specialization, then they fit into that setting. So but like I said, I haven't actually had any problems. I've had one or two students end up in a course in environmental science and this is too scientific, and then I'm able to move them around. So I suppose actually at the end of the day, the answer is, because there's so many moving parts in this degree, and there's so many different colleges linked together, the key thing is to have somebody who's in charge all the time, following up on all the students. That's me. I don't know how much that's helped.
Thank you very much. That's certainly helpful. Thank you for that clarification and answer. Let's move on to Liz. And there are quite a number of questions for you, Liz, and I'm mindful that you might have to leave halfway through. So I will try to ask you those questions as much as possible. The first one is, what sorts of conversations do you have with the university in order to ensure that you get the resources you need to run the program at Monash?
It's a really great question. We're very fortunate to have a long-standing partnership with Monash University's campus sustainability team, which sits within their buildings and operations division. And they provide us, and have for many years provided us, with funding. So we train the students, and in turn, we then give those students over to them to work on a whole range of consultancy projects, which help them deliver their sustainability strategy or work on a problem that we're experiencing on campus that the students can contribute to. And after the program, students usually stay quite active and engaged with the campus and with sustainability issues. From a more top level, it's something that you just really have to put a lot of effort into, in terms of communicating the value of the program, how it's aligning with strategic objectives within the university, so how it aligns with our strategic plan, the capabilities that it's building around preparing students to go out into the world and to address these challenges and to come up with solutions. It's embedding interdisciplinary learning and collaboration as a core experience for students, and also linking it to the employability and graduate outcomes. So being really strategic about how we talk about the program within the university context and communicate it. And the very top levels of the university do know about the program, and they often talk about it and use it as an example when they're referring to initiatives and education programs that we're running in sustainability.
Thanks for that. Theodore has been asking, as part of your presentation, Liz, you mentioned that the program seeks to teach how to be an influencer without having the authority, right? So yeah, they're suggesting that this is great, but they're keen to know a little bit more about the how for this, if you can explain.
There's a lot of literature that sits behind this, and we draw on a really great academic called Andre Taylor, who works with us. We run a Leadership for Sustainable Development unit within our Masters of Environment and Sustainability. So there's a lot of literature that sits behind it around the distributed and shared leadership model that we need for sustainable development, that everyone needs a role to play. And part of that is building kind of self-awareness, self-leadership, understanding different leadership strategies and styles for different situations. One of the big ones is around utilizing informal power and influence. So things such as expertise and relationships, your access to information, credibility, your institutional knowledge, and also building those really key skill sets for students around systems thinking and networking, communication, influencing, and students really understanding the different types of sustainability leadership roles that they can grow into, and also the types of work that they can get involved in sustainability, whether that's around the sort of beginning stage of gathering research, adding a body of, contributing to a body of knowledge, understanding how they could design a solution. So along that kind of all the things that they can do, just giving them exposure to and start thinking about the different types of leadership roles or how they might be able to make change from their own disciplines or degrees.
Yeah, fantastic. I guess it's about helping students see themselves as potential agents for change, regardless of whether they're currently in a typical leadership role per se. Thanks for that. Next, let's move on to Sarah. And the next question is for you, asking, do you track students' transformational experiences post completing their courses? And if you do so, how do you track this?
What a great question. We don't do it formally, but yeah, I was just having a think about this. It is really nice to be able to track those. And I think there's a number of ways we do it informally. So there's obviously the anecdotal stuff. So I often, at the end of the course, as part of the course, I send weekly emails and do weekly videos. And I send one at the end of the course just saying, thank you, we've learned a lot, you know, hope you enjoyed it. And I will often get emails back from students, either immediately or later on, saying how much they've enjoyed the course, but more importantly, that it's led them to think differently and to do different things. Often it will be about maybe it's changed the course of what they want to do and where they want to use their degree after they leave university. I had one student, this is a great one, that said that I'd spoilt going to the supermarket for him because every time he went, he had to check the packaging material of the food he was buying, and it meant that going to the supermarket took him much, much longer. Very small change, but really powerful, I think, that he was thinking about the materials and their sustainability every, you know, trivial step of his life. There's obviously the obvious teacher and course evaluations that we have to do, and we get good comments on those. I hear from other teachers and academics around the university who run papers that have some sustainability in them, and often they will have students that have done my course and going into theirs, and they get, you know, that to me is a you know, is justifying what we do and showing that the students are eager and have that thirst to learn more. So but also I think during the course, because we're all distant from each other, we run discussion boards that we require the students to participate in, and we really build a community, and you can really see the enthusiasm and the transformational change just through doing a sustainability challenge that helps them. We do it through a backcasting method, so we get them to think about what they would like to see in 2040 and then backcast to a challenge that they can do that is the first stepping stone towards that goal. And just through that, I can really see the transformation of the students within 6 weeks of how they think about sustainability. So yeah, a little difficult to do it any more formally, but all of those things help me understand what the students are doing. So yeah.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Our next questions are addressed to Izzy, and there are quite a number of questions around what you presented, Izzy. One in particular coming from the chat, actually posted by Katie, asking you about how this whole student hub started, the types of support that you're getting from the university, and whether or not it's purely run by students. And adding to that, Usha is also asking, how do you decide on the projects that you want to work on? Appreciate if you can address all of them.
Sure, thank you. So in terms of how the hub was created, the university is a member organisation of SDSN Youth. So that means that basically the university was entitled to create an SDG hub. So I believe it was just an initiative of a couple of students who were aware that SDSN Youth was operating in the university and built the hub from the ground up. From there, I think about 2 years later, I took over as the hub coordinator, and I was really looking to get the students from all over the place to come to the hub, which hadn't previously happened before. So we focused on going through each SDG and kind of working our way through them and educating ourselves about them. And that's how we gained more and more members. At that point, we had an influx of ideas for projects that we could do. And in the end, we ran a solutions hackathon, and the hackathon kind of produced a number of like really solid ideas for projects. And we decided as a group that we would choose the climate potentials project and run with that one solely, so that we could focus all of our people power on that, because like I said before, the volunteer nature is difficult, especially when we're all busy students. So that's how we chose the climate potentials project, essentially. I think that answered most of the questions. Was there anything I left out?
I think you covered most of them. I guess, did you want to, explain a little bit more about the way that you prioritize different projects and how you shortlist, for example, the next particular project that the hub wants to get involved in?
Sure. I guess it really depends on the particular student interests at that point in time. So at the point we ran that solutions hackathon, a lot of people were really interested in climate action, the climate action goal. And we identified that there was a lack of sustainable attitude changes towards how we were interacting with sustainability and interacting with, the SDGs in our personal lifestyles. So we went, there's a lack of action around climate change. What's a unique way of presenting this to our community that will have like a deeper impact on them? And it was one of those things from the hackathon that one of the members had kind of been thinking about for a while, and he said, why don't we use VR technology? And then, so everybody was kind of interested in climate action at that point, and he came up with that really unique idea. So that was the beginning of that.
Fantastic. And there is another question popping up in the chat for you in terms of what are some of the advantages of a student-led approach to engaging students on the SDGs?
I think especially at the University of Adelaide, clubs are a really big part of campus culture. So although the SDG Hub isn't an affiliated club, we are a separate organisation. It's still one of those organisations that students feel safe to go to. It's a place where their ideas are going to be heard, and I think the VR project coming this far has really proved that if you bring us a good idea, we're going to act on it. I think it's a really good opportunity to engage in leadership as well. So for myself, obviously being the hub coordinator has been a really good opportunity, but I also really encourage members as they come on board to say what they want to do and what skill sets that they would love to develop. And we have resources within the SDG student program and the global team that operates above us to provide those resources to help students with those desired skill sets. And then I think I mentioned earlier, but basically coming together as a group of like-minded students is really empowering. And it's been really important for the momentum of our projects is to have the support of other students from disciplines that are not those that they are already currently studying in. I think that adds a lot of power to what we're doing. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. The next set of questions are addressed to Rowena and Anna. And in particular, there is a remark by Theodore saying, in law, there is the obvious SDG core principles of equity, gender, income, wealth. And they were keen to say, you know, how is this more specifically brought into the curriculum and what you're doing?
Yeah, and so that's a really good question. So issues of justice are a really big issue in the law school degree. So we do have a number of core units that sort of deal with sort of access to justice issues and equality issues. But as part of our curriculum review, in addition to having this working group, we've had sort of focusing on embedding sustainability. We've had a second working group, which is about embedding Indigenous perspectives and knowledges into the curriculum as well, which is obviously a huge issue of equality. And really both of these groups are about creating resources, not just for isolated units, but actually to embed these concepts and to actually just draw links between what we're already teaching and how that links to to the SDG goals. So for example, in criminal law, obviously that's where we're dealing with things like rape and other sorts of domestic violence issues and things like that, really showing there those sort of links there with goal 5, gender equality, and the sorts of barriers that we've got in the legal system at the moment, preventing progress on gender equality within Australia. Also then dealing with sort of perspectives, I guess, around Indigenous representation. So looking at our unit on constitutional law and making sure that we've got good content in that unit on, you know, Uluru Statement from the Heart, Statement from the Deep, covering the Torres Strait perspective, but actually ensuring that in all of our units that we're actually not just bringing in that sustainability lens, that we're bringing in that kind of broader lens and just making the connection between what we're already teaching and how that actually connects to the SDGs. And I'll just let Anna have a little bit of a chat because Anna's had that lucky job of going and meeting with all of the individual unit coordinators over coffee and having a chat about what they could do. And I'll let Anna have a little talk about that as well.
Thanks, Rowena. Yeah, so, and I think this responds to another question that's come through as well, which is about engaging with a broader group of stakeholders. And so as part of the curriculum review, we have been having meetings with all of our core unit coordinators. So there's 19 core units in our law degree. And we have been talking to them about these various themes, including embedding sustainability, and as Rowena said, embedding Indigenous perspectives. And it's not the case that we can necessarily address all themes in all units. What we're doing is talking to the unit coordinators to work out what is actually going to be a logical fit for their unit. So Rowena just mentioned that in constitutional law, for example, embedding Indigenous perspectives is a logical fit. But in terms of embedding sustainability, there is a logical fit with some of our core units. For example, around corporate law, and as we've discussed, there's an emerging area of practice around environmental, social and governance in corporate law, or in property law, when you think about conservation covenants, for example, or in administrative law. So administrative law is an area of law that's concerned with challenging government decisions, and that includes decisions around approval of coal mines, for example, which necessarily consider issues around climate change impacts, etc. So there are logical synergies that we are finding with many of our unit coordinators, and it's actually been terrific to have these conversations and brainstorm with them what some of the possibilities are based on their own understanding, their own research. But we've also had a couple of working groups doing some research, some background research to inform these conversations, so that we can also go to the meetings with unit coordinators and perhaps suggest some ideas that they may not have considered yet in terms of what the connections might be.
And we've also got quite a strong group of researchers in this space who have actually offered to create the content. So in addition to actually saying we want you to do that, we're actually also saying if you want help creating that workshop activity or those slides, we can help do that as well, to help sort of deal with some of that resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Deanna's just asked us about, well, have we asked students about what they want in any of this? And so I did ask my students I teach the elective on environmental law, and I sort of said to them, what do you want? And they said they wanted another elective. In particular, they wanted some more information around planning law, which is a really big issue, which is really dealing with climate adaptation and basically how we plan for the future. So looking at a new elective in that space as well. But they also wanted, for a lot of students, environmental law was an elective that they do in their final year, and they said they wanted all of this from the beginning of their degree. So that's that message that we've taken forward to make sure we've got that core unit, and then we embed that across the degree into various other units as well. And I'm pretty sure that our director of engagement actually had a focus group with students about,
Yeah, so we did also, as part of the curriculum review, consult with student representatives about the changes that we were making to the curriculum. The student representatives were also supportive of this idea of embedding sustainability in the core. Like us, they were wondering about whether there would be sufficient student interest to sustain a whole minor on the topic. So that's why we're going to do some further research to gauge that level of student interest. But certainly there was strong support for this idea that this is a key theme. It's certainly something that students are getting exposed to increasingly in schools. And there was strong student support for the idea that this should be addressed as part of the law degree as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So far, as part of your remarks, you've mainly alluded to the various strengths as well as some challenges that, as part of the implementation of various initiatives you guys have faced, which I think is great. Now, building on that, one particular question that was posted by one was, how do we catalyze the change to education for sustainable development? And I guess, and this is an open question to all of the panel members, once you talk about some of those catalysts, I also want to hear your insights in terms of whether or not you think there is an optimum combination of these various approaches when it comes to adoption of education for sustainability and sustainable development goals and various initiatives to that. This is an open question for all of the panel members, whoever wants to go first. Can we start with you, Sarah?
Sure, we were all being too polite there, weren't we? Nobody wanted to go first. I think a real barrier to that is the silos that we create. I think we need to make sure that we don't have one discipline or department or subject that claims sustainability for themselves. We see, I personally see a little bit of that at my university. Anything with an environmental or sustainability or climate change label on it tends to get sort of poached a little bit or claimed by one department. I won't name them. I think that's a real barrier, and I think this understanding that every discipline, and I think Rowena and Anna have shown that remarkably well, have actually a role to play in teaching about the SDGs and sustainability, but that we have to coordinate that, I think. So maybe having some core papers, you know, that anybody can take, plus some more discipline specific things, I think is really valuable. I mean, my university has a graduate attribute for all our graduates of environmental literacy. Now, it's sort of up to us how we do that. So, but, you know, I think that can be a tool or a mechanism to make subjects and departments think about how they're teaching that and how their students are going to meet that graduate attribute.
Yeah, fantastic. And do you think there is an optimum combination of these various initiatives as well?
I don't. I just think there needs to be a coordinated approach. And I think I certainly see that in my university, that we don't have that because traditionally our 4 divisions, academic divisions, have sort of existed in silos and done things quite independently. I think that's changing because, you know, we've realized that competing for students is not good, because actually, the other thing I wanted to say was actually, I think this should be student driven as well. I think the more demand we see from students, the more the universities have to change. So, you know, and we should definitely be asking them what they want Do they want individual papers? Do they want a whole degree? Do they want it scattered about, or do they want some combination of that? But yeah, I think the important thing is to, talk to them and do something. Yeah.
Sure. How about
I
you,
can build
Samantha?
on a bit from what Sarah was saying. When we started the Masters of the SDGs 3 years ago. I'd only just arrived from South Africa, so we started 3 years ago. And I must say, in the first 2 years, probably the biggest challenge was trying to work in a university that is completely set up for silos. And here I come along and I'm running this degree and I'm working across colleges and people are changing things in science and I don't even know about it till I get students emailing me to say half the courses they're supposed to take aren't even available. So definitely universities in particular are set up in silos. We're so separate. And there are many people who like those silos, and particularly in your older, more established disciplines, don't want to leave. However, that said, at the same time, I have found that the key is to find the people in each of these colleges who sees things differently, because they are there. I mean, we've got 8 different specializations I work with 6 different colleges, 4 different colleges. I work with a whole lot of people across the university. And what I have found is that within each of these silos, there are people there who have a passion for sustainability and a passion and a understanding and a genuine desire to work across the silos. And when you get those people working together, it works. It's fantastic, and it's synergetic. So I mean, I just find it's not even when I was thinking about what to say today. Normally, my first thought of what is the challenge is, it's working across the silos. But in all honesty, it's not. It's not even difficult anymore, and it's only because I found the right people. The right people got together, which is key. So yeah, definitely. I mean, that is just, they are there. You just got to find them, and it's lots and lots of coffee meetings.
Speaking of the right people, and there is actually a very relevant question to that, which is about how we engage faculty more widely in the SDGs. I mean, there is one way of thinking about it as, well, can we have smaller groups, working groups who have initially expressed interest and engage them? But how about the wider faculty? How can we engage them as part of that? And if that is a way to go, then what are some of the challenges around it? Probably we can start with you, Rowena and Anna, and then go to other panel members if they want to chip in and contribute.
Thanks. So I think that we mentioned previously the work we're doing meeting with unit coordinators from a range of different areas of law. So they don't necessarily have a sustainability background, but we are having the conversation with them about ideas for integrating ESG and the Sustainable Development Goals into their units. But I think I'd also like to pick up on the point that Sarah was making about the importance of a coordinated approach, both within a school of faculty, but also across the university, because one of the things that we're hearing at QT is that because the SDGs are now a key part of curriculum design for the whole university, there can be a potential for overlap across, like, for example, if you've got a law student doing a double degree in business and law, if the same content around the SDGs is being addressed in both the business degree and the law degree, there is potential then for overlap, and you could understand that the students wouldn't necessarily appreciate that. So one of the things that I think is really important is to have those conversations with colleagues to understand what it is that is happening in other schools or faculties, so that, for example, the approach that we're adopting in the law school, we have tailored it to our law context to ensure that there won't be unnecessary overlap with what other faculties are doing. So in law, the particular focus is around ESG as an emerging area of legal practice. So that's tailored then to our law context, and we're not expecting that there will be overlap with what's happening in business or engineering or other faculties.
Lovely, thanks for that. How about you, Izzy? What do you regard as some of the major, I guess, challenges and areas for improvement in terms of the projects that you guys are dealing with? And what could be some catalysts moving forward?
I guess, yeah, the challenges are definitely our resources as students and as volunteers. And operating in a university space that is both receptive to what we're doing, but also limited in what it can provide to us, just purely in an administrative sense, as we're not an affiliated organisation within the university. So we've had to be quite creative with the support that we've been seeking from individual staff members and officers in the university. I do think that there is an overall lack of understanding of what sustainability is across the faculties at my university. Like it has been mentioned before, those silos definitely exist, and it seems like there isn't very much communication across those faculties in regards to how to integrate sustainability in curriculum. And I found that with talking to a lot of students that there isn't a whole lot of understanding about the broader implications of sustainability in their education or in their employability in the future. At the same time, it is a growing understanding that learning about sustainability and being engaged with it will, be valuable to future employers and the future job market. But yeah, there are limitations to that depending on the degree that the student is undertaking and what extracurriculars they've also chosen to engage with. I also was thinking about the University of Adelaide has recently put out for consultation a sustainability strategy. So that started off with a very small working group or a steering committee that was formed by the Vice Chancellor. So that's been quite successful, but something that I noted was a challenge or a limitation there was that the faculty, the staff members and the researchers that attended consultation sessions in regard to the strategy were mainly from the Faculty of Arts and Humanities, and that it was a great discussion. It was great to hear that there is so much passion for sustainability, but a little disappointing that other areas that are really important in sustainability weren't present to hear this conversation and be a part of this conversation. So we'll see what the sustainability strategy kind of comes to. That's still it's still being worked on, but I just wanted to raise that.
Thanks for that. There is also a particular question around, the efficiency and effectiveness of various programs and initiatives that have been discussed so far. And the question is, to what extent and how do you or the university actually monitor and evaluate for efficiency and effectiveness of so many of these initiatives? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. I haven't gone first yet. Are you referring to the question about how do we know what is done to assess the graduates from the courses and the programs?
So this particular question, which was posted by Oigoga, is asking about the way you actually monitor and evaluate the efficiency and effectiveness of various initiatives.
Well, I mean, mine is a bit different because it's an entire degree. So there's, structure set in place to monitor it. So I don't know, does somebody else want to jump in here?
I always think with my paper, because it's an elective paper, for me, it's the number of students that take it. We started in 2018 with 23 students taking it. We're now up to 100, in 4 years. And I think that's I'd love every student to be taking it. To be honest, 100 is all I can manage at distance. But, sort of to me, and it's a word of mouth thing, that's for me, a measure of the fact that the students want to take it and it's effective and they want it. But it is only one paper. Yeah.
Thank you. Rowena and Anna, did you want to add anything there?
Well, ours is similar to Samantha's in the sense that because we're talking about a whole degree and we're talking about units within a degree, there are the standard ways that they are assessed and evaluated and the standard quality assurance processes. But the other opportunity is the regular reaccreditation process that we have at QT every 5 years. And so building in the sustainability theme in this curriculum review is a terrific opportunity, and working towards the next curriculum review, we will consider what we want to do in the elective space. So I think that working within those kind of formal structures is a wonderful way to ensure course renewal at our institution.
Thanks for that. And building on what you described, and in particular for your program, there is a question asking an inquiry really about what year students are exposed to the SDGs in the core curriculum and whether or not you actually follow that through along the program.
So at the moment, they're probably exposed very broadly to the concept of the SDGs in a core first year unit. But it's not really covered in detail. So the plan for the new curriculum is that there will be a new core unit that all students in the law degree will take, and that will expose them specifically to SDGs and the approach we're talking about to defining it as ESGs. But then what we will also see is that pretty much every single year of the course will have a number of units which are directly embedding or linking to ESG content. So it will be across the entire curriculum, both in the core and in the elective pool as well. So it's a whole of curriculum approach that we're implementing.
Lovely, fantastic to hear. And you know, thinking about the diversity of these initiatives and projects, one thing that comes to my mind is how can we make sure that these various impactful projects are actually embedded or integrated as part of the core business of what we do. In fact, we've got one question asking, how do we ensure that many of these projects are actually brought into the mainstream of the core strategy, the core course, and ensuring that they're not simply just added on or bolted on a strategy, so to speak, that is just pushed into what we are already doing as a business as usual. Can we start with you, Sarah?
I suppose I'm actually a sort of bolt-on course in some ways because I'm an elective course, but it was developed in response to the fact that there was nothing that was addressing particularly sustainability of materials, which of course is really core to environmental sustainability from a product, a material sense. So I think it's quite difficult, well, I can only speak for my university. There certainly are people, like Samantha says, I know of people in all the faculties, the divisions that are interested in this. Actually getting something that becomes more mainstream is a little bit more difficult. We have a sustainability office that helps. I think students help spread the word and put pressure on for us. Yeah, I think it's difficult because we're so used to being able to act sort of relatively independently. But yeah.
Would you say that that's an ambition that you're actually aiming for and aiming towards?
I certainly have seen in the last few years that there's definitely more of a push from the university, but they don't really dictate to us what courses, programs, majors should be run. That comes from academic divisions. And again, it's that siloed approach. So it's actually, quite challenging to do something that's interdisciplinary in terms of a major for the students, but it requires individuals to get together and develop it. Yeah, and it's we're financially squeezed at the moment, so they don't want new papers. They don't. So I'm really impressed, especially Rowena and Anna, that you can get new papers in and get them approved, because we can't very easily at the moment. Yeah.
Izzy, I'm keen to hear your perspective from a student perspective, really. How do you see this difference, whether or not it needs to be mainstream or a typical approach whereby different impactful projects or initiatives are dedicated to sustainability that would still work? What are your thoughts around that?
Sure. I think it does need to be more mainstream. I think that exposure at early stages of degrees to sustainability is necessary. And I think to a certain extent, a lot of my experience has been that that's the case. But I think when it comes to like the elective courses and things like that, that can't just be it, because you'll find that the students who are already interested in these topics are all just going to go there, and or they're all just going to go do a environmental policy and management degree, and you'll find very like-minded people there and there. But in your, I'm trying to think of another course, like a specialized admin law class, there are not as many people that would share the same interests as these two groups in there. But I think that, like Rowena has touched upon, it's still necessary to bring sustainability into all those other courses. And that's just from a law perspective. So I think that, yeah, it does need to be mainstreamed. And then in relation to the kinds of projects that the SDG Hub is running, we're trying to make it mainstream for people to join volunteer clubs like this, and, you know, dedicate their personal time to it. You don't get paid for it, but it's part of that, like, global citizenship and stuff like that, that will really drive your motivation into your career and things like that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that. It's almost time and we are reaching the end of the session. So I just want to thank one more time all our distinguished panel members for their remarks and their time, and all the participants for attending and their very, I guess, good and insightful questions that they shared. Thank you very much for that. I will now hand over to Tol.
Thank you, Miran, and thank you so much to all the speakers and to for so many questions. This has been really fascinating to see the different approaches that you can take. I'm still don't have the answer. Is there an ideal approach? Do they all have a room somewhere? And I think it would be always keen to keep discussing these kinds of questions. But really, thank you again. And also, we're wrapping up this 3-session series this November on education, on mainstreaming education for the SDGs in higher education in our region. And we are starting to talk about what we might do next year. So if people have ideas, feel free to contact us, and also keep an eye out on the recordings of the sessions and any future activities. So again, thank you very much, and we hope to see you next year.